Yeah, I remember that morning at Mongla. That was funny. But the reason why we ended up in Mongla is pretty interesting in the first place. So, 2 months ago, on that day, we were on a usual EBC route, Namche, Tengboche, Pangboche, Labuche, and then EBC. But on the day we were hiking from Namche to Pangboche, it just so happened to be May 29th, the day of the annual Tenzing-Hillary Everest Marathon.
The Everest Marathon is the highest altitude marathon in the world and one of the toughest. It is held every year to commemorate the first ascent of Everest by Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary. Starting from Everest Base Camp at 5,364 meters, runners navigate rugged trails, steep descents, and high-altitude villages before finishing in Namche Bazaar. The marathon is not just a test of endurance, but a celebration of Sherpa heritage and the unbreakable human spirit.
And we were watching all of this in the majestic backdrop of Lhotse, the fourth highest mountain in the world, as we headed for Kangchuma, a place just after Namche. I remember it was here while having our lunch that me, Ronnie, Tenzing and Pemba, we all decided to take a detour from the usual EBC route. Now, instead of heading straight to Tengboche, we would be following the ultra-marathon route and proceeding to Mongla. Don't get me wrong, the way from Namche itself was pretty scenic and the weather was clear too. But we wanted to see more of this marathon spectacle that was unfolding right before our eyes. And honestly, the decision to go via Mongla, the best one we made on that journey.
Mongla sits atop a rugged hill. The trail is steep, rocky and incessant, with sections that feel nearly vertical and require immense concentration on part of trekkers.
After a bit of a climb, I saw Pemba sit down. And Pemba, being Pemba, I was sure he was cooking something wild in his mind. I could see it in his face. And lo and behold, he started climbing a vertical rock face without any sort of ropes or equipment.
Go up!
Oh, there is no way to go.
Go up!
From there is the route, but I'm suspense. I don't have a rope, so I will not go.
We asked him, why would you even think of climbing that? He just shrugged and said, because it's there. Classic Pemba.
Yeah.
On top of Everest, huh? How are you feeling?
Not exactly, yeah. Almost.
How are you feeling, bro? Good?
A bit cold.
Yeah. Me too.
But I'm not feeling cold, bro. I'm feeling hot.
He's always hot, right?
Yeah, because I'm Tenzing Norgay. You know? I already climbed Mount Everest.
We didn't see any more marathon runners that day, but we had our daily dose of adrenaline, and that was enough. We were absolutely soaked and cold by the time we reached our tea house. A cup of ginger lemon honey and a plate of Nepali dal bhat felt like an elixir. How was the night?
Oh, it was so beautiful. I'm dreaming about my girlfriend. Yeah, passed away.
You're dreaming of Pemba's girlfriend. Dreaming of Pemba's girlfriend.
Yeah.
We were satisfied to the core, and we went to bed that night absolutely unaware of the yak encounter that we'll be having next morning. Surely one of the highlights of that journey.
first rule in the mountains, pace yourself. Rushing is a big no-no. You need to gain altitude slowly so your body can acclimatize and avoid acute mountain sickness, or AMS as it's more commonly known. As a general rule, trekkers take a day off for acclimatization for every 800 to 1000 meters of altitude gained. By that logic, after Namche, our next acclimatization stop should have been at Lungden. We had already gained nearly 800 meters by then, and we were about to reach Gokyo via Renjo, reaching a maximum altitude of 5,370 meters, gaining another 1,000 meters in the process.
Are you sure I'm correct decision nojandi? Aji bhagi jibaru.
To be honest with you, I didn't have an answer to that question at that moment. I knew the possible consequences of our actions, but we were determined to make up for the days that we had lost initially in Kathmandu. We didn't have endless days, you know.
Can totally feel the shortage of oxygen at this altitude. I miss you, oxygen.
From Lungden, the hike to Renjo, the first of the 3 high mountain passes that trekkers cross on their way to Everest Base Camp, takes roughly 8 to 10 hours. At such altitudes, atmospheric oxygen levels drop to about 50%. In the absence of proper acclimatization, this drastic reduction could lead to altitude sickness. As the brain and muscles receive less oxygen, the heart starts to beat faster to compensate, and even simple tasks start to feel exhausting.
It was a dangerous game that we were playing that day. For us as a group, it was a race against time. And for me, I was in a battle of my own. I hadn't told anybody yet that I was suffering from AMS. 20 minutes into the hike, I was already short of breath. I was gradually falling more and more behind from the group, and I was panting heavily, and I couldn't even talk. We're just getting started for today. Long day ahead. I'm feeling the effects of altitude a little bit today. We are almost at around 4,700 or maybe 800 meters. We stayed right there last night. That's Lungden. And that's Pasang Lama Peak, named after a local woman, Pasang Lama. She was the first local woman to climb Everest, and while returning from the summit, she fell to her death. Somehow, I think Brownie had sensed that I wasn't okay. She was coming down again and again to check on me if I was alright, almost nudging me to keep moving forward. Coming. I'm coming. It was as if she already knew exactly what situation I was in. But Sana, on the other hand, was doing much better. Yeah?
We have just covered 1 hour from our 9 to 10 hour journey. Yeah. It's a long day ahead. And have some electrolyte. Oof. Anyway, the weather has been kind today. There's no rain and there are good views all around from this place. So at least the next 8 to 9 hours won't be monotonous, right?
We're going to go up there.
It is going to be a fun ride.
And beyond that, what lies ahead, I don't know. Nobody knows except I.
So today feels like we have signed up for the most difficult trek in the Everest region.
Let's hope the path gets a little bit easier.
You can only hope. Chalo, let's go. Dai is waiting.
The trail to Renjo La is a demanding ascent through one of the most breathtaking yet punishing landscapes in the Himalayas. The path winds through a barren, rocky terrain, gradually steepening as it climbs towards the high pass. The route is a mix of loose scree, boulders, and well-worn trails carved by trekkers and yak herders over the years. With minimal oxygen and almost no humidity, the harsh atmosphere soon starts to become a problem.
My cheeks are burning due to the thin air and low moisture.
At these altitudes, instant changes in weather pose an additional challenge for the hikers. Heavy fog and clouds can rush in almost instantly, transforming clear skies into a dense, blinding whiteout within minutes. And it happens quite frequently on these trails, usually post-noon. Near zero visibility, possible rain and snowfall, combined with the increased chance of landslides and rockfalls, makes navigation incredibly difficult in these circumstances.
As the day progresses, clouds start filling in and it gets cloudy and windy, and your target should be to beat the clouds.
As soon as he said that, I saw a thin sheet of cloud pass just over me. And then suddenly, in no time, we got clobbered by clouds from all directions. It got infinitely colder instantaneously.
The clouds are hitting us right now. It'll be a tough walk.
The warm sun that we were walking in suddenly vanished, and things got pretty serious pretty suddenly. We got beaten by the clouds and by quite a margin, and we hadn't even started our ascent yet.
We're finally at the bottom of Renjo La Pass, and we have to go and climb up that mountain to reach Renjo La. Looks quite intimidating, but let's do this. Coming, Brownie, coming. Let's go. That was it. I was done. My head was pounding, I was dizzy, my brain wasn't getting enough oxygen. I could feel it. It was the most mind-numbing headache I had ever experienced. It was as if someone is trying to crush my skull. I wasn't seeing well, wasn't breathing well, I couldn't think, couldn't move. No sense of direction, no plan, no next step. I had no idea where Sana and Dai were. Most likely I was bewildered too, lost in a haze of exhaustion and altitude. All I could see was this lake beside me, still, silent, almost surreal. Was it even real? I couldn't tell. I just gave in and sat down beside it to rest. My mind couldn't fight the exhaustion anymore. And then, I just closed my eyes.
Fortunately, Dai and I were not too far ahead. I saw Brownie zooming around me as if trying to bring my attention to something urgent. I followed her and she led us straight back to Amy. When we arrived, we found him sitting on a boulder alone, his head resting against his trekking stick. I put my arm on his shoulder. He laboriously looked up and signaled. That's when I came to know he was battling AMS. Up until that moment, we had no idea. We just assumed he was hanging back to take photos like he always did. It never crossed my mind that something might be wrong. Fortunately, he hadn't passed out, as is often the case with AMS. He was still responsive, and that gave us a small window to quickly assess our options. Turning back to Lungden, not viable. We were too far out. Staying put, out of the question. We were too close to the top of the pass, and his AMS would only worsen at this altitude. There was also a significant danger from rockfalls. There was only one way forward. We had to keep moving, and I think at that moment, Amy understood that. We gave him energy bars, made sure he stayed hydrated, and waited for him to regain even a fraction of his strength. And while all this was happening, we watched the top of Renjola getting pummeled by thick, rolling clouds, winds, and snow. It was getting more dangerous and challenging.
I have absolutely no idea for how long we were there. Time felt warped. And then, slowly, I opened my eyes and I could see them. Sana, Dai, Brownie. I forced myself to think, if I didn't start to walk now, I was putting everyone else in danger too. And that wasn't an option for me. It took every ounce of mental strength to stand up and take my first step forward. But once I did, I didn't stop. Step after step, we climbed. And before I knew it, we were there. Renjola. Absolutely treacherous, windy, snowy, and misty. Visibility? Almost zero. Brutally cold. We had made it to the top.
So finally we are at Renjola Pass after a very tiring trek to the top, and unfortunately the view is not as we expected from here. All the important mountains should have been visible had the clouds not been here, but it was all in all an enriching experience climbing up till this point. This is 5370 meters.
Till now, I have no memory of what happened in those few hours. All I remember now is that as I reached the top, a teardrop rolled down my cheek. Tears of joy? Of pride? I don't know. Even now, I can't quite explain it. I had never felt such an emotional overload ever before. Maybe it was something deeper, not meant to be understood. There's no doubt, Sana and Dai helped me, and I'm beyond grateful for that. But Brownie? Brownie was the one who had actually saved me. When I say that I was saved by a dog, when I could no longer move on a remote mountain pass deep in the Himalayas, literally no one will believe it. It sounds too scripted, something out of a story. But it did happen. When I look back on that day, I can't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play. Something beyond logic, beyond coincidence. I did feel someone had a hand over my head, someone looking after me. That day was a defining moment for me, not just for the rest of the journey, but for the rest of my life.
So, where are we now?
Renjola top.
That padlock also you can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
At 1,364 meters. Renjola, yes. But Water very stronger. Today come the Lungden to Renjo. Now on the 2 o'clock. And then
It's all cloudy, no
cloudy,
view.
huh? What do you do? Okay, yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We're going to the EBC. Very lucky people. My member, very stronger. How are you? Very good. Good. The 5,364 meters. We're going to the there.
Everest, that's it, directly.
Okay.
Yeah. Everest, Lola, Kumari, and then Nukje, and then Dausa Amadablam, Cholache, Tabuche, Parila here. And the upside Choyu, Gojungba, Jajungkang, yeah, this area. And many round and mountain here, but cloudy now.
We started descending to Gokyo from Renjola top. We could see the Gokyo lake get bigger and bigger in the distance. With the decrease in altitude, Amy had started to feel a bit better. Few tough lessons were learned that day as we continued to push through exhaustion. Some things are bigger than we are. We just can't fight it. Nature has its own way of humbling you down, and we learnt it the hard way that day. As we reached Gokyo, it felt like we had reached home, a home more beautiful than any other. It felt like God's own place, yet familiar. We were going to take our long overdue acclimatization break here. After a tough day, a break at Gokyo felt like a reward for all the hard work that we had put in to push through Renjola, a reward that we were too glad to accept.
So finally we are at Pasruna.
I see ya, free falling with your parachute pants. Look like the Vegas Strip lighting up when you dance. Got your threads dripping with the glitz and the glam. Ain't nothing gonna hold you back.
Don't you think?